Hi, everyone. Welcome to Healing Arts Talks. Tonight, I have a very special guest. I have Trece, who is an herbalist and Reiki practitioner. Thank you so much for coming on tonight, Trece.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to get into this conversation and have really helpful information for folks and just to share your craft and all of your knowledge.
Yes.
Yes, I guess I wanted to start out by asking how you started out in getting into this work as an herbalist and as a Reiki practitioner. You have so many wonderful gifts. So what's your story and how you got started in those healing art forms?
I think it started with a desire to really heal myself first. And I was realizing that I was going outside of myself on so many accounts and realizing that people couldn't provide me the type of healing that I needed. And it really began maybe back in 2016, when I had just came back from college and had realized that I had no type of space to actually transmute all that I was going through when I had just graduated, and then realized all these things about my family, and then got into foster care. And I'm like, okay. So then when I got to college, of course, all of it just, came to the surface. And I was seeing it through my relationships. And eventually that led to like me having a difficult time just even sleeping. The anxiety kicked in, and then the derealization kicked in when I would like go outside and like feel like my whole reality just wasn't real. And I was going to the therapist and like asking them like, why does nothing feel tangible anymore? And they answers, of course.
Right.
And some of them even looked at me like I was crazy. And I'm like, okay, I need to go back to Philly and really like just get to the root of why all of this is coming up in the way that it is. And so it was coming out of like a really deep need and desperation of also like purifying all of that. Because it didn't feel like it was me, like it didn't feel true to like my essence. I knew that it felt like something that was the karma and the generation, the generational remnants from like my mom and her mom.
Yeah.
So after going through that, I'm like, okay, what can I do physically to start to like alchemize some of this? And after doing a lot of research and reading and countless like crying and trying to figure it out, I came into contact with like a full body cleanse. A 30-day cleanse. The first 10 days was completely raw. And you had the option of doing like a juice cleanse as well. And then by the end of it, I realized that like everything that I was using was completely plants, completely herbs. There was no additives. All of it was natural from the earth. And I think that incited some curiosity of how being in contact with something so pure and directly from the earth brings you even closer to whatever the root of what is within you. So after the 30 days of doing that, that opened me up to, of course, like veganism, and then purging everything, and like, okay, I need to completely just flip everything upside down and study more. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to, continue that work without being like an herbalist, like making it a lifetime's work. Because you all the way into it. It just requires your full attention and your devotion. So I think I made that commitment back then. And then I wasn't sure of the cultural implications that it held until like maybe a couple of years later. I'm realizing that this is also something else that is gatekeeped.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was curious about what it meant to like reclaim that innate knowledge without the eyes of an institution.
Mm.
And it took me like a year of going through like another college or like another program and realizing, oh, I'm not going to get what I need from this. I'm not going to get the spiritual aspects from it, and I'm not going to get even the ancestral connection that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So I had taken some time then to just figure out a way I can make my kind of figure out a way to make like a daily communion around that, whether it be like taking one herb a day and researching, or whether it be like just going out in nature and like, you know, recognizing one plant and then doing more research that way, or just like talking to a plant.
Mm.
And I think that's also when Reiki came in, because Reiki also requires you to be fully immersed in your feelings. And when you're able to, you know, kind of cross and merge the multiplicities of the senses and emotions, it becomes much easier to like decode any conversations that need to be happening between you and nature.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe after maybe like 2 years after I decided like herbalism was something I wanted to pursue, I also learned more about Reiki. And then I took the step to like, you know, get more affirmed in Reiki level 1 and Reiki level 2, and what that meant, and like how energy can move spatially, and how you could even go back in time. And I think that brought me further into understanding like, okay, I'm learning to also transmute grief and PTSD, because my inner child is controlling this conversation now. Like
Yeah.
all of the wounds were embedded within these traumas that were way, 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 way back when.
Mm.
And I think it's even more interesting when we talk about grief, and like grief is such a human emotion, and it's so natural and so pertinent to even feeling more, because it says that you loved something. The
Yeah.
fact you even acknowledge that something is no longer there, it says, okay, I was once with this thing and I'm no longer with this thing. And so I feel like that's like the original wound, or the original shedding that we have to like come back into. And it's within that knowingness that like you once loved something, that it takes you further into the timelines of when that love happened, of
Yeah.
when that love went away. Um, and even further into what conversations were even happening then when that love was taken away. Like how much were you still holding on to then, and like how much of the pain were you even feeling in that moment, and how did that change from then until now?
Mm.
Change. And if it didn't change, then of course it's going to be embedded within you
Right.
even more so, and it grows until it has your full attention to transmute itself fully. In that pain in itself, I feel like kind of asks the question of, who are you and why did you come here?
Yeah.
Um, And I think plants ask the same question, like, who are you and why are you here? Help you. And so I feel grief and plants, they kind of function on the same pathway of like trying to get you to remember like your soul essence. But you can only remember essence if you can go far enough to feel what wasn't there anymore, what isn't there anymore. So right now I'm focusing on in what ways can we begin to harmonize that conversation between the brain, the gut, and the heart? And how can plants offer that guidance and like really translating that conversation? And for me, I think what I'm learning most is that when a plant asks you, like, who are you and why are you here? You have to be vulnerable enough with yourself and with that plant to maybe say, I don't know. To say that, like, I'm still trying to figure that out and I feel like something was taken away from me. Process of figuring out who I am. Because that's what grief is too. And I think we know that whole of like, you were really close to figuring, or you came into this world knowing exactly who the fuck you were. There was a hole that was imparted upon you and something was shattered and taken away from you. And so that's like what I'm trying to explore more when I say how can herbs help us transmute that grief and that PTSD? How can we be vulnerable enough with herbs and with plants to say, I need your help in figuring that out? Because the earth is the all-knowing, the greatest recollector of everything and every feeling, every emotion, every memory. So when we consume herbs and when we go to herbs in need of healing, it just allows us to like figure out why. It may allow us to figure out why it feels so heavy in the brain space or the head space, or to figure out why the heart always feels like it has to control or so, or to figure out why emotions don't even make it down to our stomach, and if they do, they're not digested or they're not completely transmuted and downstream. And when we focus on well, for me, the reason why I'm focusing on like the brain, the heart, and the gut is because I feel like they are like the main centers of connecting the mind and the body together and the soul. And when they're not in harmony, then that's when the nervous system kind of loses that contact and that conversation as well. Yeah.
I love this concept of like having a conversation with the plants and like really being vulnerable, as you were saying, and like getting to know them, as opposed to being like, I need to be healed right now. Give me. You know, we live in a society of this instant fix, this instant healing. I want to get better now, but really being vulnerable and open and kind of like the process of grief and how the plants have a process, like the parallels between those two. I find that really fascinating, like how you work with herbs in that way, and really building a connection it's really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I feel like the earth, before anybody, she knows what pillaging feels like.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The colonialism and the take and capital, yeah, and produce and take it and shove it into and make it into a tincture and mass produce, you know, as opposed to like really sitting with it and sitting with your process, you know, sitting with your grief, sitting with the PTSD or whatever has come up, or, you know, other traumas that have come up, and really processing it and taking time. And that's a beautiful form, a way to do that is through herbalism.
Yeah. And I think that because it requires like so much like intuition and just like vulnerability, that the energy work comes into, which we all do, you know. We all Reiki practitioners in some way. Whenever we touch like a wound, or whenever we fucking stump our toe and we touch the like it's very natural. But merging those two worlds together just kind of keeps you in that remembrance of like, okay, being very tender with touch right now so that I can receive whatever messages I need to, or just being open to whatever it needs to be open to.
And it's interesting because it sounds like both of those forms, Reiki and herbalism, require this deep listening to, you know, to be open, as you were just saying, and to figure out like how they can work together or support someone. So like when working with folks, do you find that like you certain herbs come up when you're doing a Reiki session that somebody needs to work with, or even that you need to work with, or you know, you're dealing with a certain chakra or energy point and you're like, maybe they need to work with this particular herb or root?
Yeah. Yeah, I think because I'm most focused on like the brain and the gut and the heart space, I'll be able to like identify, okay, somebody's head feels like really, really busy now, which I can attest to because Mercury.
Yes.
And in that case, I might like, you know, offer maybe like ginkgo or go-to kola, or even peppermint, which is interesting because peppermint is like a natural airy plant. And so sometimes it can incite like a little bit more brain activity, but it can also like kind of focus that brain activity too, because it's so cool. But yeah, like if I'm in that space of knowing or feeling whatever part of the body like feels the most busy, I'm like, okay, this herb might help. And so far though, I felt like I haven't actively merged those two fields just yet. Like I'm still in the beginning phases of doing it. Right now it's like really separate. Like I'm offering Reiki services to like friends or family, and then just doing like herbal research and doing like herbal workshops on the side. And Reiki sometimes goes more over into the herbalism, where I'm like trying to like show people how to like listen more or like feel more. So instead of bringing like, you know, the herbalism over to the Reiki and be like, okay, this is how this can, you know, yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah, and I think it's like it shows how much you're like dedicated to, you know, studying each particular craft and like really taking your time. Like I noticed that you're like very meticulous. Like when you begin to study something, you really want to like understand this whole component on its own, which I think is really important as a foundation before like, you know, merging the two completely, or you know, sometimes they might just be on their own, you know, for a while.
Very true. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, I'm learning to like, I almost just love researching things like really intensely. It's too much that it just takes me down the rabbit hole, and I have to be like, okay, you need something to balance this. So being able to like um have multiple avenues of things kind of keeps me from getting so fixated on one thing and not like holistically, maybe bringing them together. I
Yeah.
don't in that way it like takes you even further into that field when you can relate it back to something else.
Yeah. And I also think, yeah, it's just interesting to kind of really take your time, and sometimes organically they might come together, or like I know people who do like are in multiple fields, and some of them say like, okay, they're all by themselves. I'm an artist on this day and an herbalist on that day, or like or at
Yeah.
the moment. And then sometimes it's like, oh well, I need this to support me as an artist, or I need to work with this particular herb to support my craft right now, or so I think it's an interesting dance how all of these different fields that you study can kind of support you at different times.
Mhm. Yeah, they blend together really well. Now I'm interested in exploring being a birth and death doula and like how herbs can play into that,
Oh wow.
and into like the ceremonial aspects of it, and like
Mm,
what it even means to explore deaf medicine again.
mm.
um I think I'm really excited for that.
That sounds so fascinating too, because it's like that idea of the process coming back, and this life, death, life cycle, working with plants, and then like working as a death doula and bringing that together. It could be really powerful.
Yes. Yeah. After the webinar today that I told you about earlier, I just was like, okay, this is really happening. It's finally here. And it feels really important, mostly because I feel like the earth is oscillating between birth and death,
Yeah.
um, at a rate that we haven't seen in like ages. And so to be able to like explore both of those realms and then like offer services it feels ancient.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming back to that intuitive knowledge of how to connect with the earth and help heal yourself and others. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think skills that are definitely needed in this new world that we're transitioning into.
It's new world. Yes. New
Yes.
order.
Yes.
Yeah.
Child, we need all the things that we can get.
uh, I don't think I can ever get used to that term, the new word.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
an upgraded version of colonization.
Mm.
It's very yeah. In some ways it's like disheartening, I feel like.
Mm.
Feels like a betrayal to all that is natural.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in other ways, I know that it's also just like a mark of growing as a collective.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's hard to into it.
Yeah, it's like so many different changes, and then like on top of that, like kind of how you were talking about how things get institutionalized, or like they're gatekeepers in these spaces for things that are so inherent to us as human beings.
Mhm.
Yeah, it can get kind of weird, when you have people trying to make money, off of herbalism, and to the point where it feels like so commercial, or even Reiki or any other, healing art.
Yeah. And in the same breath, though, it feels like we're gaining a certain kind of sovereignty that was taken away from us at one point.
Mm-hmm.
No longer have to go through a middleman.
Yeah.
Um, but that also means that there won't be as many checks and balances of who is who people say they are, or like, you know, so that'll be a really interesting revealing too, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're in for a ride here. I really do feel that. Yeah. Well, we are close to time, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to let folks know what you have going on now and how they can stay connected to you and your work.
So right now I'm working on a website, but until that's finished, I have a link on my Instagram at Constellation. And Follow will put it down in the chat. And then, of course, the email will also be included in that link. So if I don't get to you through DMs or through Instagram in itself, you can definitely reach out through email and we can set something up. Right now, I'm not offering any herbal consultations, but I am offering about 4 different blends that can you know, cater to the heart space, into the brain, into the gut. And I'm definitely open to, of course, like talk more about that and be in communication about how it's like maybe affecting you, and if you would like to, you know, change from one blend to the other, that'd be great too. But I want to take my time with offering consultations. And with Reiki, I am getting into now offering those services. I don't know if I feel comfortable just yet with like charging folks, but that is something that I'm definitely offering. So if you're interested, you can reach out for that as well.
Yes, yes, definitely hit Trece up. I'm super excited to see like you unfold and continue to share with the world. And I will definitely put all of Trece's info in the description box below so that you can stay connected.
Yes. Thank you so much. This was so beautiful and necessary.
It was. Thank you so much for coming on. It just lifted my spirits, and just to hear you talk so eloquently about the work that you do is amazing.
Oh, I appreciate you.
Everyone, thank you all for joining us. This is a new format. Thank you for joining us on this journey to doing a recorded version, and we look forward to connecting with you later. Bye, everyone.